Will the Bears sign Taylor Lewan? We talk about that next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mr. Johnny PayPal. PayPal, how you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good, Brad. I'm still having the kind of, the football fever, and I've been watching a lot of the XFL and everything. So,
Nice.
I'm just, we're recording on Thursday, and we got to hurry this thing up, Brad. The XFL's on right now.
Crap, are the Rough Riders or whoever it is, the
Yeah.
Battle Hawks playing?
I'm going to miss the big game,
Oh, man. Yes, and for those that have seen our episode right before this, where we break down the defensive cap casualties, as you can tell, we are wearing the exact same clothes. I forgot to turn on my lights behind me, and PayPal, you remembered that the corner you were talking about was Brent Grimes. So for those that haven't seen it, haven't heard it, make sure to listen back, make sure to like and subscribe, and also make sure to download the podcast everywhere you get your podcast. Today, though, we are breaking down the offense. We did do a full dive into the wide receivers, so we'll touch a little bit on the potential wide receivers. But really what we're going through today are the cap casualties. Who could become a cap casualty from the offensive side of the football, not for the Bears, but for across the NFL, because the Bears don't really need cap casualties. You have to sign people to multiple year deals in order for them to be a cap casualty. So we don't have that, which I am very thankful for. But let's go over to who could be a cap casualty, and let's start with the offensive line. Yet again, not everybody has been released. I scoured the internet, and these are some of the people that I found that are most likely to be cap casualties. Starting with number one, who already is a cap casualty, Mr. Taylor Lewan, formerly from the Tennessee Titans. Next, we have Dwayne Brown, an offensive tackle from the Jets, rumored to be cut, or who might be cut. Trent Brown, offensive tackle from the Patriots. Donovan Smith from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Shaq Mason from the Buccaneers. I'm going to say this for the millionth time. Tampa Bay needs to get rid of some people. They have a huge salary cap. That's why there's a lot of rumors on who is actually going to be cut from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But PayPal, I already know who stands out. Who stands out to you?
Yeah. None of these guys I'm really interested, except for Taylor Lewan. Funny, he knew he was going to get cut. He said it like a month ago on a podcast. He knew he was going to get cut. He wanted to say it outright and be like, "Hey, when I do get cut, I don't want to get my feelings hurt, so I'm going to say it right now." So I love him as a player and a person. I mean, people say he's got this big personality, which he does, and his podcast affects his play and everything. Now he's on with Bussin' with the Boys and affects all that. He's still a 3-time All-Pro Bowl player, and a great locker room guy. And really, we'll see if he can kind of fill in a right tackle spot, because personally for me, Brad, I don't think we need a left tackle. Braxton Jones definitely locked in. I know some
Let him
people
do
are
his thing.
are already are kind of questioning, like, oh, it's Braxton Jones. He's locked in. I mean, everyone loves him on the coaching staff, and Ryan Poles does, so we don't have to worry about that. But Taylor Lewan, I think he's a great option. He's very talented, and he's a 3-time Pro Bowler, so why wouldn't you want a veteran to help this offensive line?
I love the Taylor Lewan stuff too. Like, he's big, 6'7", and you talked about the fiery personality. Poles was saying, I want someone to fight when my quarterback gets hit. Taylor Lewan will be the first person he will be fighting for Justin Fields every step of the way. He's going to have his back. He's going to be a fiery person that's inside of that offensive line that I don't really think we have, right? Braxton Jones, very nice guy, would love to hang out with him. But Taylor Lewan is very fiery. He's the opposite, right? and it's the fire and water, and I really like that. But you mentioned the right tackle. I think that's where it's interesting. A lot of these players, not really right tackles, they're all left tackles. But yeah, can Taylor Lewan play right tackle? Because yeah, Braxton Jones, it's not like he's going to be an all pro next year. That would be amazing. But there's so looked so good last year. I think that you gotta keep him at that left tackle position. You don't want him shifting around too much. But yeah, Taylor Lewan, he's top of my list, but PayPal, there's one thing. You talked about the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. That's from Barstool Sports.
Mhm.
Do you know where Barstool Sports is headquartered out of?
It's headquartered in New York.
I thought it was Chicago.
Now it's going to be in Chicago.
So there
So,
you go. So
yeah.
Chicago, there's the connection right there. He's got a little closer commute. He's also fun.
True.
We said he fits a lot of the personas that we want to have on this team. And yeah, he's going to be 32 this year, so he's not insanely old when it comes to offensive linemen. The other people like a Dwayne Brown, that's an insanely old offensive lineman. He's 37 years old. I think that Lawan can still play decently. And even when he was out there, he played decently. PFF gave him a 67 grade, which isn't bad on only 64 snaps. He's been a very good player. And I think ultimately, if he becomes available, I think he's someone you can get fairly cheap and not like dirt cheap, but I think you could get him to a reasonable deal and
Mhm.
fill in admirably. But yet again, this is where Poles is is the man, right? I would love to see Lawan out there, but we're talking in a vacuum, right? You
Mhm.
and I right now, we're just talking about cap casualties. We're not talking about the grand landscape because Lawan is seems to be the better one out here because PayPal, if we look at the other ones, Dwayne Brown was not a great run blocker last year. PFF gave him a 44 grade. And we were talking about this pre-show, or we talked about this pre-show. Is that a lot on the team, right? More so than Dwayne Brown. He did only allow 1 sack last year at that left tackle spot, but yet again, another true left tackle. Trent Brown is more of a right tackle from the Patriots, but frequently injured. And Donovan Smith, lots of penalties. Would you get any of these other tackles? Do they stand out besides Lawan?
Yeah, none of them really do. With the other free agent, I always think of like the free agents that already, going to be free agents this year. There's a lot better options than those last four that you mentioned. And funny thing, I really think that Taylor Lewan thing can come true with the Barstool Sports thing coming to
Yeah.
Chicago because I just think of what just happened recently. The Bulls just signed Patrick Beverly, who has a podcast with Barstool Sports,
There you go.
and just went to Chicago. And I mean, he had all the stuff lined up to him. He's a hometown Chicago kid. And then he also is going to the new office. So, like, it worked out perfectly for him. And hey, maybe that's what Taylor Wan takes into consideration when going to Chicago.
Taylor Lewan went to Michigan, not Illinois,
Hey,
but
close.
Midwest. This is Midwest fam right here. Like he's got a it's close. And we all know like if you are from the Midwest, you want to be back in the Midwest. So yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. But yeah, I think the big question is really that left tackle, the right tackle. What would they do? They have a plan in place with that because you don't want to mess up the development of a Braxton Jones at that left tackle spot. But that's down to the offensive line coach and also Ryan Poles to see the bigger picture of some of those free agents. And yeah, Trent Brown was interesting, but yeah, just because of the frequency of injuries, I don't love
Mhm.
that. But the other former New England player, but now 1 year with the Tampa Bay Bucks, Shaq Mason, is really interesting coming off of not a bad year, but a down year according to his standards. He's only 29, probably going to be there. He's going to turn 30 in this season next year. Good player at the right guard spot. I'm interested if he were to get cut, and that he's the person that I doubt would get cut because he is a good player. I believe they traded for him. that's where I think like Donovan Smith, and we've talked about so many Tampa Bay players that could get cut.
Yeah.
I think Shaq Mason is at the bottom of the list of people to get cut, but would be interesting though at that right guard spot. But yet again, we have a player called Tevin Jenkins, 1 year left. We'll see what they truly think about him.
Hey, I think they love him. And think about it, Brad. That right side, if Taylor Lewan does move to the right side, having those two giant beasts in Tevin Jenkins and Taylor
Whew,
Lewan at the right
yeah,
side. And hey, and you talked about the guys to step up for their quarterback. Tevin Jenkins did that
yeah,
last year. And having two guys just being able to do that and kind of create that just aggressive, like don't mess with us type of thing on the offensive line, I would love it.
for real. That's a great point. You're talking about that's going to be the
Power.
right side of that line is just going to be
Just run it.
fierce.
Run it on
Yeah,
that side, and then
the left
your
side,
blind
like Cody,
spot, yeah,
yeah,
is good.
left side, you're gonna have quiet people with like a white hair and and Braxton Jones. But Braxton Jones, there's a reason why they ran to the left side a lot because of
Yeah.
Braxton out there. And then center, you will see. Unfortunately, there wasn't any centers that really popped out as a cap casualty. So hopefully we can get John Michael Schmitz or Tippmann out of Wisconsin in the draft. Someone to replace our bad center spot. But let's go over to the next group of players. I just lumped them in together because there wasn't a lot out there. Running backs and tight ends. Aaron Jones was going to be on it, but I literally had to remove him. Aaron Jones, the running back from the Packers, a lot of people rumored that he was going to be cut, but what ended up happening was he took it's kind of like a restructure, I don't think it was a restructure. I think it was actually he took less money and saved more cap so that he could stay on the team. So
Mm,
awesome move from his perspective, bad move for us because I would have loved to see him in a Bears uniform, especially with Luke Getzey. So when we go to the running backs and tight ends at the running back position, lots of rumors about Joe Mixon because the Bengals are doing kind of bad when it comes to the salary cap. And do they really need to pay a running back? My only thing is he's kind of their only running back that like P. Ryan doesn't do what Joe Mixon can. But
mhm.
when you go over to the next player, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard is going to be a free agent. Do they just cut him loose and then say, we're bringing back Pollard? Another Tampa Bay player next, Leonard Fournette, the running back. You already know the story. They need to get rid of Cap. And tight ends, Zach Ertz and Hunter Henry. Zach Ertz, old vet at Arizona, new regime. And Hunter Henry signed a huge contract. The Patriots never really spend big in free agency. It's starting to eat away at them with some of those acquisitions. Hunter Henry hasn't performed as well. PayPal, out of this list, does anybody really stand out to you as
Yeah.
someone to target?
Yeah, I'm a big Joe Mixon fan. I mean, after that one game where he had like 5 total touchdowns, I think it was, where it was like 4 rushing and then 1 receiving touchdown where went absolutely nuts last year. I mean, he's such a versatile running back where he can do it on both ends. And that's what I really love about him. Ezekiel Elliott, I eh, I would not be surprised if Dallas kept him, even with his crazy contract. For some reason, Jerry Jones just loves Zeke. Like
That's true.
I think he's just some marketing guy that can just make him money, so he keeps Zeke on the team. um, and Leonard Fournette, I he's all right. I think he's kind of losing that gas. Like he's really not even a runner anymore. He kind of transferred into this like receiving back, which I guess running behind Khalil Herbert could be good. I mean, if we got Leonard Fournette for cheap, just kind of have that third down back, block and receive the ball. But Zach Ertz and Hunter Henry, I truly think we found our tight end in Cole Kmet. He really proved last year that he is, you know, the number one guy. He looked very confident. He was able to block and receive. So Zach Ertz and Hunter Henry getting big names like that, I don't think is worth the price tag for me.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Like me going through it, like the running backs, I just fear that are they gonna have an ego, right? Like you want to have not a huge ego come in. Zeke definitely has that. And
Mhm.
a lot of scouts are already saying that Zeke is done. His legs are toast. And yeah, you bring up a good point with Jerry Jones. Mixon, I'm one of those weird people. I've never liked Joe Mixon. I have no idea why. I just
Hmm.
never I think it's because he dropped because of his like domestic violence charges that he had,
Oh.
so I just didn't like him because of that, like, rightfully so, he got in trouble with the law, and yeah, I'm curious. I feel like they're gonna try and keep him, like, they gotta keep him, he is the running back for them, and yeah, Fournette, funny thing, not known as a 3rd down guy, but had to be because the Tampa Bay line was so bad, and it
Mhm.
was nice to see that he could at least flex into that, but still, I none of these guys I would really jump for joy, like, I really wouldn't want the Bears to go out and get. But yeah, the tight ends, I'm interested in Hunter Henry, or do you go with like a don't wanna even say Jimmy Graham, but like Zach Ertz as a Jimmy Graham type of player later on in his career, he's
Yeah.
32 years old. Do you pick him up as a vet to kinda I mean, now that I'm saying that, Cole Kmet doesn't need to be mentored. It's his 4th
Yeah.
season, right? So, maybe Hunter Henry would be interesting from a red zone target, but yeah, like, when you talk about the price tag, it seems like Ertz you could probably get cheap at, like, a veteran team maybe,
Mhm.
but I don't think we necessarily, like, need him. It would be a nice to have, but I don't think we need him because he doesn't do much different than what Cole Kmet does. Hunter Henry can give you that red zone presence, but I think someone who actually needs a tight end would try and seek him out.
Well, I think that's where actually Zach Ertz actually might be actually pretty good because, you know, I kinda always like having, winners on a team, you know? I remember when we got Danny Trevathan, that was a big deal because he just won a Super Bowl, and it's like, we got this Super Bowl winning guy on our team. He's gonna bring that mentality, which honestly, I thought he did to the defense. Um, and then rest is
Yeah.
history with him. But Zach Ertz, like, he was on a winning Super Bowl team, and I obviously he's not gonna perform as well as he did in the Super Bowl. Um, but I think he can bring something to just he can have those kind of retro plays where, like, that looked like Zach Ertz back in the day, and I truly think that can happen with, like, a veteran like that, where he's not gonna be doing that every single game, but you're like, "Wow, that's still Zach Ertz," you know?
Yeah, you make a good point. You reminded me of a point that I made on a previous show where if you have this extra money, it's good to spend in kinda like luxury spots, right? Like, where if you can get a
Yeah,
pass rusher, like a Yannick Ngakoue that all he does is rush the passer, you have the money to splurge on someone like that. And
yeah.
by getting a Hunter Henry, and I think about what the Bears did with Jimmy Graham. They splurged to get Jimmy Graham as a tight end, as that red zone target, and they overpaid like crazy for him. And I don't agree with the contract they gave him, but it's kind of the same concept. Well, if you bring in a Zach Ertz or a Hunter Henry, yeah, they get banged up some, but they give you a lot of great depth at that tight end position. And I like that idea if you can get them at a decent contract. And now your tight ends, you have 2 good tight ends out there as great mismatches. So we know that the wide receiver class isn't great. So if you miss out on a wide receiver, don't get that number 1, you at least have 2 good tight ends to kind of open up the field. So
Mhm.
I'm coming around to that. Like it
Yeah,
could be good. Uh,
yeah.
so PayPal, let's finish this up with the wide receivers. Like we said at the very beginning, we have an entire episode on that. If you haven't listened to that, make sure to re-listen to it, where we break down all the wide receivers that are on the trade block that can be released. And just as a recap, some of the wide receivers: Michael Thomas, Kenny Galladay, Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, who was actually released, Robbie Anderson, Corey Davis, Russell Gage, Keenan Allen, and Mike Evans. I know for me, I love my boy Keenan Allen, so that was kind of my go-to. I'm hoping that he gets released, but yet again, we'll see with Khalil Mack, we'll see with Keenan Allen. Chargers do need to get rid of some of the cap, or do they just restructure? But PayPal, who, just as a summary, who kind of was the big name for you?
Yeah, I think again too, Keenan Allen was kind of that big name for me. You kind of remember you talked me into it basically of like, wow, he actually would be a good idea. Mike Evans, I think, is kind of overhyped. I think that's one of those big names that people might like, but just isn't the right receiver where he's kind of slow. He's kind of slow. We already have that big jump ball receiver. And I I think more of like Robert Woods is kind of someone that I like. Like he'd be a nice sign. He wouldn't have to be too much, but he creates that yards of separation that Justin Fields likes to throw to. That not many people on this list, like Robbie Anderson, really hasn't proven himself. Robert Woods has proven himself, like a Keenan Allen or even Michael Thomas has proven himself as well.
Yeah, and Michael Thomas has proved himself a couple of years ago, not so much anymore
Yeah.
now. I mean, when he was out there this year, he looked really good. Like he looked like a good receiver, but yeah, the head case, they have to ask themselves, can they keep that under wraps? But yeah, the only thing I will say, as you were talking about that, you kind of warmed me up to Robert Woods, because I think that you can get him for like a minimum deal as a trial, and you can cut him in preseason and in training camp if he's not working out. Like if you can get him at that minimum, like 1 year trial, I
Mhm.
don't mind that. But if you sign him to a bigger deal, that's where, in like a handful of guarantees, that's where I get nervous, because I think he's going to be 33 this year. He's
Yeah.
surprisingly, shockingly old
Wow.
for a player. Yeah, 32 or 33. He's over 30 for sure. Um, and has had
He's
some.
like forever 30 years old for me. I don't know why. He just seems like he's 30. Like the way he plays, like he's not outrageously fast, but he gets open.
Yeah,
He's kind of like the Adam Thielen when he was a little younger, and then
yeah, he
yeah.
was. See, Thielen to me was always like 26. Like he was 26 and now he's 32. Like he just kind of like jumped. All of a sudden he's in his 30s. But yeah, Robert Woods always to me was like 29, because I think
Yeah.
it's the face. Like he looks kind of
Yeah.
old.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not super young, but yeah, he's not ancient either.
Yeah, like we said, we broke down it all, so make sure to listen back to that if you want. But we're gonna keep our ears to the ground. We're gonna be listening for what's going on, what players might be cut. So we'll be going live though on Sunday night, 7:30. Make sure to stay tuned. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. We'll keep this one short and sweet. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she